I was standing on the sidewalk, holding a bottle of painkillers, my other hand pressed to the fresh, tender scar on my side from donating a kidney, and right in front of me, staked into the lawn of my childhood home, was a bright, "For sale, sold" sign. The pills were for the pain after the surgery. The scar was the proof of my gift to my sister. The sign was the proof of her theft. She sold our mother's house. She sold my past while I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from giving her a piece of my own body. This is how the person I saved decided to destroy the life I had left. The first time I saw the "For sale, sold" sign staked into the front lawn of my mother's house, I was holding a bottle of prescription painkillers in one hand and pressing the other against the fresh, tender scar on my side. The sign wasn't just a notice, it was a punctuation mark, a brutal, final period at the end of a sentence I didn't know we were writing. The pills were for the pain after donating a kidney. The scar was the proof of that gift. The sign was the proof of the theft. I stood there on the public sidewalk, a chill seeping through my coat that had nothing to do with the weather. The Victorian house, with its wraparound porch where we'd played and its sage green shutters Mom had picked out, looked back at me, hollowed out, a stranger's prize. My sister, Alara, hadn't just sold a property, she had sold the physical heart of our family, the keeper of all our ghosts and laughter, while I was lying in a hospital bed, my body learning how to function with one less organ. She sold it, packed the proceeds along with everything else, and vanished. The betrayal was so complete, so audacious, it didn't feel like anger at first. It felt like the world tilting on a new, cruel axis. How do you calculate the debt when you give someone a piece of your literal life and they repay you by erasing your past? Before the scar, before the sign, there was just my sister, Alara, 2 years younger, forever bathed in the golden light of being the baby, where I was practical, a freelance bookkeeper who found solace in balanced spreadsheets and clear numbers. Alara was a creature of impulse and charm. She painted, she traveled on a whim, she fell in and out of love with the dramatic flair of a silent movie star. Our mother used to say I was the anchor and Alara was the sail. Mom's sudden death from a heart attack left us both unmoored, but it left Alara spiraling. The anchor dug in, the sail flapped wildly, searching for a wind. The house was our shared burden and treasure. We agreed, over a tear-filled bottle of wine in the very living room we grew up in, to keep it, to not rush, to let the dust of grief settle before deciding on estates and deeds. It was a sacred pact. I handled the ongoing bills, the insurance, the quiet maintenance. Alara, when she was in town, would fill it with flowers and music, trying to ward off the silence. It was our equilibrium, fragile but holding. Then Alara got sick. The diagnosis was a rare, aggressive kidney disease. The options were bleak, a transplant or a lifetime chained to a dialysis machine. I got tested without a second thought. Of course I did. She was my sail. When the doctor told me I was a perfect match, I didn't feel fear. I felt a profound, terrifying sense of purpose. This was the ultimate thing a sister could do. This was balance, my stability for her survival. I told her over coffee, trying to sound casual. Turns out we're compatible in more ways than just arguing over the TV remote. She wept. She called me her hero. She held my hands and said, "I'll never be able to repay you, Maya, never." I told her repayment was never the point. The point was us continuing. The point was family. The surgery was scheduled. In the weeks leading up to it, Alara became strangely efficient. She took over more of the communication with the lawyers about Mom's loose ends. She said I had enough to focus on, that it was the least she could do. I was buried in my own pre-op appointments and a deep, primal anxiety about the operation, so I let her. I handed over the file folder, grateful. The anchor was tired. It felt good for a moment to let someone else steer. Would you like me to continue to part 2, covering the surgery, the recovery, and the first chilling hints that something was wrong? The hospital was a world of bleached white and beeping machinery. I remember the cold of the gurney, the anesthesiologist's kind eyes above his mask saying, "Just count back from 10, and the feeling of falling into a deep black well. When I surfaced, pain was my first consciousness, a deep, grinding ache in my side, as if I'd been hollowed out and clumsily stitched back together. My husband, Ben, was there, his face pale with worry, holding my hand. "You did it," he whispered. "It's over. She's in recovery, too. It worked." For a few days, the world was a haze of morphine and fatigue. Alara was in a room down the hall. When I was strong enough to be wheeled in to see her, she looked frail but radiant. The sickly yellow tint was already fading from her skin. She reached for my hand, her grip weak but fervent. "You gave me my life back," she whispered, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. It was the high point, the moment of pure, unadulterated purpose. I would cling to the memory of that moment like a life raft in the storm that was coming. I was discharged first. My recovery was a slow, humbling crawl. The simple act of laughing or coughing was a lightning bolt of pain. I was told to rest, to hydrate, to avoid lifting anything heavier than a gallon of milk. My body felt foreign, halved, and vulnerable. Ilara stayed with us for the first 2 weeks after her discharge, then fussed over us both, making broths and ensuring we took our medications. It felt briefly like we were children again, in a strange, inverted way, both of us convalescing, dependent on care. Ilara talked a lot about the future. "When I'm strong again, I'm going to travel," she'd say, her eyes dreamy. "Maybe Italy. I feel like I've been given a blank slate." I'd nod from my recliner, smiling through the discomfort, happy to see her dreaming. I didn't yet hear the singular I in every plan. The first crack appeared when she moved back to her own apartment. The calls became less frequent. Our check-ins, which had been daily, stretched to every other day, then to brief, hurried texts. "All good here. Tired. Talk soon. X." I told myself it was normal. She was regaining her energy, her independence. She had a life to restart. Then came the paperwork. A letter arrived from the county assessor's office addressed to both of us at Mom's house. It was a standard notice about property tax, but it required a signature. I texted Alara. "Got a tax thing for the house. Want me to bring it by or should I forward it to you?" Her reply took hours. "Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. I've got a meeting with the estate lawyer next week anyway to sort the last bits. Just focus on getting stronger." It was a reasonable, even sisterly response, but a tiny alarm bell rang in the back of my pain-fogged mind. The last bits. What last bits? Mom's will had been straightforward. The house was ours jointly. The bank accounts had been settled. What was left to sort? A week later, I called the lawyer's office myself under the guise of confirming an unrelated detail about Mom's will. The receptionist, who knew us both, was cheerful. "Oh, yes, your sister was just in. Such a relief that she's doing so well after the transplant. She's so on top of everything." "I'm sure she is," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "Just wanted to make sure we're all done there." "Pretty much," the receptionist chirped. "She finalized the paperwork for the power of attorney today. Makes things easier, I'm sure." The phone grew heavy in my hand. Power of attorney. I hadn't signed any power of attorney. We'd never discussed it. A cold trickle, distinct from the surgical aches, started in my stomach. That evening, I logged into the shared online portal for the utility bills at Mom's house. The password didn't work. I tried again. Invalid. I called the gas company, going through the automated system. When I finally reached a human, after verifying my identity as a co-owner, I asked about the account status. The account was closed as of the first of this month. Final bill was paid. Closed? My voice sounded thin, far away. By who? Let me see. The request was made by an Alara Vance with proper authorization. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she'd found a better provider. But why wouldn't she tell me? Why change the passwords? The final clue was a missed call from our neighbor, Mrs. Gable, an elderly woman who had lived beside Mom for 40 years. When I called her back, her voice was full of gentle curiosity. Maya, honey, I hope you're feeling better. I just saw the most interesting car at your mother's place last week, a real estate agent's car with one of those magnetic signs on the door. Were you girls having the place appraised? The world went very quiet. The grinding pain in my side flared, a sympathetic echo of the deeper tear happening inside me. I could hear my own heart thudding against my ribs. The real estate agent, the closed utilities, the power of attorney, the singular I in every Alara's future plans. I looked down at the fresh pink scar on my abdominal, the proof of my gift, my sacrifice, my love. For the first time, it didn't feel like a badge of honor. It felt like a target, a mark she had seen and decided to exploit. The morning after Mrs. Gable's call, I drove to my mother's house. I hadn't been cleared to drive yet, but the thrum of anxiety in my veins overrode medical caution. Every bump in the road sent a sharp protest through my healing side, a physical counterpoint to the dread building in my chest. I turned onto our old street, and there it was, the sign. Not just an agent's car, but a bright plastic for sale sold sign, planted with definitive permanence in the center of the lawn. The world telescoped. The elegant script of the realty company, the cheerful red sold banner across the top. It was a visual scream. I pulled over, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I walked up the front path, my legs unsteady. The lockbox hung from the front doorknob. Strangers had been walking through our home. I fumbled for my key, the one that had never changed, the one Mom had given me when I turned 18. It slid in, but the deadbolt wouldn't turn. New locks. She had changed the locks. I stood on the porch, my forehead resting against the cool wood of the door. The scent of my mother's climbing roses, just beginning to bud, filled the air, a cruel reminder of what was being lost. I had to know everything. I drove straight to the county recorder's office. The walk from the parking lot was a marathon. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit room, I requested the property records for the address. The clerk brought up the digital file. I scanned it, my eyes skipping over legal jargon until they landed on the line that stole the air from my lungs. Grantee, Elara Vance, a single woman. Grantor, the estate of Eleanor Vance by its attorney-in-fact, Elara Vance. Date, April 12th. Consideration, $475,000. April 12th. 2 weeks after our surgery, while I was at home navigating the searing pain of getting in and out of bed, she was at a closing table. She had used the power of attorney, the one I never signed, the one she must have forged or manipulated the lawyer into creating, to sell the house to herself. For $1? For a promise? No, for nearly $500,000. She had sold our shared inheritance to herself, making it solely hers, and then, presumably, sold it again to an actual buyer. The sold sign was the second sale. The betrayal was a two-stage missile. The first impact was the house. The second, which detonated as I sat in my car shaking, was the money. Our joint inheritance account, Mom's life insurance, the small savings she left, it was to be a cushion for both of us. The login was saved on my laptop at home. I drove back, each mile a blur. At my kitchen table, I opened the banking website. The password, a combination of our childhood pet's name and Mom's birthday, worked. The dashboard loaded. Account balance, $47.22. A series of transactions, all within the past month, told the story. 3 large electronic transfers, each just under the wire transfer reporting limit to an account I didn't recognize. The final one, 2 days ago, had cleaned it out, leaving less than $50 behind. The bank of destination had a foreign code, international. The room spun. The physical pain in my side was now a dull, full-body ache. She hadn't just taken the house. She had taken every last cent of our shared security, the money that was meant to help us both in the wake of losing Mom, and she had sent it out of the country. I found my phone. My fingers, cold and clumsy, dialed her number. It rang, and then her voicemail, cheerful and familiar. "Hey, it's Alara. Leave a message and I'll sail back to you soon." The sail. She was the sail, and she had cut the anchor loose and set off with everything. I called again and again. On the 5th try, she picked up. "Maya, is everything okay? You shouldn't be stressing." Her voice was light, but I heard the tension underneath, the guardedness. "Where's the money, Ilara?" My voice was flat, dead. A pause. "What money?" "The $475,000 from Mom's house, the $85,000 from the inheritance account. Where is it?" The silence on the other end was different now. It was the silence of a caught animal calculating its escape. I don't know what you're talking about. The house stuff is complicated with the estate. The lawyer said—" "I just left the recorder's office," I interrupted, the deadness giving way to a tremor of pure rage. "I saw the deed. I saw the bank transfers. You sold the house to yourself. You emptied the account. You changed the locks. What did you do, Ilara? What did you do?" The line crackled with her sharp intake of breath. Then the facade crumbled. The charm evaporated, leaving a voice that was hard, defensive, and startlingly cold. "I took what was mine, Maya. I almost died, Maya. I needed a fresh start, a real one. That house was a tomb. That money was just sitting there. You have your safe little life. You don't need it." "You took what was ours," I whispered, the truth a knife twisting. "And you took it while I was recovering from giving you a part of my body? Was that the plan all along? Get me weak, get me trusting, and then clean me out?" "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped, but there was no real heat in it, just a frantic need to end the conversation. "It's done. I'm in Portugal. The money's here. It's over. Just move on. Be happy with your boring life." Portugal. The word was a foreign object in my mouth. "I have to go." The line went dead. I sat at the table, the phone slipping from my hand onto the floor. Portugal, the blank slate, the dream of Italy shifted west. She had planned this. The efficiency before the surgery, the taking over of the paperwork. It wasn't sisterly help. It was reconnaissance. It was strategy. She had looked at my act of ultimate love, my gift of life, and seen it as the perfect window of opportunity. The ultimate betrayal wasn't just in the theft, it was in the timing. She had used my sacrifice as her cover. The discovery was complete. The house was gone, the money was gone, my sister was gone. All I had left was the scar and the devastating knowledge that I had given a piece of myself to someone who saw it not as a gift, but as a vulnerability to be exploited. For 3 days, I moved through my own home like a ghost. The pain from the surgery, which had been receding, roared back with a vengeance, a deep, infected ache that seemed to originate not from the scar, but from my very core. Ben hovered, worried, bringing me tea I couldn't drink and saying things like, "We'll fight this," with a fierceness that made me want to weep. His certainty felt like a foreign language. Fight what? A sister who was an ocean away? A fait accompli? The house was sold. The money was gone. The legal deed was signed. She had won. On the 4th morning, I woke up with a clarity as sharp and cold as a surgeon's scalpel. This wasn't about winning something back. It was about containment. It was about drawing a line in the sand of my own life so that her betrayal could not consume what remained. My first action was not emotional, it was logistical. I made an appointment with a lawyer, not our family's soft-spoken estate attorney, but a litigator named Diane Croft, whose website photo showed a woman with steely eyes and the phrase "asset recovery and fraud" in bold letters. Her office was all sleek glass and cold purpose. I laid it out for her, my voice surprisingly steady. The surgery, the forged power of attorney, the self-dealing sale, the international transfers. I slid a folder across her desk containing the property record, the bank statements, and a photo of my surgical scar, dated. This, I said, tapping the scar photo, was her opportunity. Diane listened without pity, taking notes. The civil case for the stolen funds is straightforward but difficult internationally, she said. Portugal has treaties, but it's slow and expensive. The criminal case for the forged power of attorney is stronger. That's fraud. That could bring real consequences. I want to file the police report, I said, today, and I want to file a complaint with the state bar against the lawyer who let this happen. I don't care if it's slow. I care that it's on record. I care that she knows there is a consequence, even if it's just a piece of paper with a case number she'll never see. Diane nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. That I can help you do. My second action was digital and financial. With Ben's help, I secured everything. I changed every password on every account. I froze my credit. I opened a new individual bank account. I removed Ilara as the emergency contact on my medical files. Each step was a small, silent brick in a wall between her and the rest of my life. The third action was the hardest. I had to go back to the house one last time. Not to get in, I couldn't, but to see it, to feel the loss completely, and to say a private goodbye. I parked across the street as dusk fell. The new owners had placed a potted geranium by the front step, a kind, normal thing that felt like a desecration. I didn't cry. I just let the reality of it settle into my bones. This is gone. This chapter is closed. That night, the delayed shock finally hit, manifesting not as tears, but as a fever. My body, still healing from the immense physical trauma of the donation, buckled under the weight of the psychological one. An infection, the doctor said, likely stemming from stress compromising my immune system. I was readmitted to the hospital, a cruel, ironic echo of where this all began. Lying in a hospital bed for the second time in months, connected to IV antibiotics, I had nowhere left to run from the truth. Ben sat beside me, holding my hand. "Why?" I whispered to the ceiling. "I gave her a kidney. Why wasn't that enough?" He had no answer. There was no answer that could make sense. Some debts are so enormous they can't be repaid. And some people, when faced with such a debt, don't choose gratitude. They choose escape. They light a match and burn the ledger. The action I took from that hospital bed was internal, and it was the most important one. I stopped asking why. I started asking what now. The gift I had given was pure. Her choice to betray it was hers alone. I could not let her choice poison the nature of my act. My gift was one story. Her theft was another. I had spent weeks trying to bind them together. It was time to sever them. When I was discharged, weak but clear-headed, I asked Diane to proceed with both the police report and the bar complaint. I didn't do it with fury. I did it with the detached precision of a janitor cleaning up a toxic spill. It was no longer about emotion. It was about protocol. Justice, perhaps, was out of reach, but consequence, that could still be documented. The action was not about getting revenge or even getting anything back. It was about reclaiming my narrative. She had written me as a victim, a mark. I was rewriting myself as a witness who would testify on the record to what had been done. The truth, I learned, has its own specific gravity. Once I stopped hiding it, it settled into the world, and everything realigned around its weight. The first tremor was family. My Aunt Sharon, my mother's younger sister, called after receiving a formal letter from Diane, the lawyer, notifying her as a beneficiary of the original estate. She'd been left a small piece of jewelry about the potential fraudulent conveyance of the house. Her voice was shaky. "Maya, honey, the lawyer's letter. Is this true? Did Alara really?" "She sold the house to herself and took all the money to Portugal, Aunt Sharon, 2 weeks after I gave her my kidney." I stated it plainly, the facts now worn smooth from repetition. A long, stunned silence, then a soft, heartbroken curse. "Oh, that foolish, selfish girl. Your mother's heart would be broken twice over." That was all she said. But in the family ecosystem, Aunt Sharon was a keystone. Her quiet, horrified judgment filtered down through the cousins, the second cousins, the extended network. The family didn't choose sides in a loud way. They simply stopped asking about Alara. Her name became a quiet space in conversations, a subject that prompted a sad shake of the head and a change of topic. Her social media profiles, which I hadn't blocked but couldn't bear to look at, went quiet. She was marooned on her Portuguese island, cut off from the mainland of her own history. The second wave was professional and social. I didn't announce anything, but news of a major police report, especially one involving a forged power of attorney and a sizable theft, has a way of rippling through a small city's professional circles. I was at the grocery store when an acquaintance from the neighborhood, a woman who knew both me and Alara casually, approached me near the dairy case. "Maya," she said, her voice low with a mix of pity and fascination, "I heard about everything. The kidney, the house. I just can't believe it. How are you even standing?" I met her eyes, keeping my expression neutral. "Some days are harder than others, but I'm managing. Thank you for asking." I didn't elaborate. I didn't feed the story. My dignity became a wall. People could see the outline of the catastrophe, but I refused to give them a tour of the ruins. This had the effect of making the story about her actions, not my victimhood. I was the one who was wronged, but I wasn't broken. She was the one who had done the unthinkable. The most significant consequence, however, was for Alara's old life here. Her florist shop had been shuttered during her illness. Her landlord, a kind man who'd held her space, received a formal notice from Diane about the investigation and the international flight of assets. The lease was terminated. Her circle of artistic friends, who had initially rallied around her during her sickness, slowly learned the fuller picture, not from me, but from the immutable calculus of the situation. She got a kidney and then disappeared with all the family money. The romantic notion of the ailing artist fleeing to Europe curdled into something darker, more calculating. Her number, now with a foreign country code, went unanswered. I received one last attempt at contact, not from her, but from a mutual, well-meaning but naive friend from college, Sasha. She sent a long email pleading for understanding. Maya, she's scared. She had a near-death experience. People do crazy things when they're given a second chance at life. Maybe she just saw a different path. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? Family is forever. I read it once, then drafted my reply with careful hands. Sasha, I'm glad she has her second chance at life. I gave it to her. With that gift came a responsibility to be a better person, not a thief. She chose theft. She chose to run. Family is forever only works if both people are playing by the same rules. She changed the rules without telling me. My responsibility now is to heal, not to chase her into the life she stole for herself. I hope you understand. I never heard from Sasha again. The public consequence was a great silent sorting. Those who valued loyalty and integrity stayed in my orbit, offering quiet, practical support. Those who valued drama or easy forgiveness faded away. Alara's orbit across an ocean became a void. The world had absorbed the truth and reconfigured itself. The house had new owners who painted the shutters blue. The bank account was a closed case number on a detective's desk. And my sister was a ghost story people told in hushed tones, a cautionary tale about how far a person can fall when they mistake another's love for weakness. The consequence for her was not handcuffs, but erasure. For me, it was the heavy, quiet burden of rebuilding on a foundation that had been brutally tested and held. Healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You circle back over the same pain, but each time from a slightly higher vantage point with a little more strength to carry it. The first year was the hardest. The physical scar faded from an angry, raised red line to a pale, silvery seam. It became a part of my landscape, a permanent inscription on my skin. I stopped seeing it as the mark of my betrayal and began, slowly, to see it as proof of my capacity. I had given life. That fact remained true, no matter what she did with it. Her choice could not retroactively poison my intention. I had to learn to separate the two, my act of love and her act of theft. They were parallel truths, not a single tangled knot. I went back to work. The orderly columns of numbers in my bookkeeping spreadsheets became a meditation. Here, things balanced. Debits and credits could be reconciled. It was a world of clean, logical justice that my personal life lacked, and I clung to its predictability. Ben and I, weathered by the storm, found a new depth. We sold our old place. It held too many echoes of my convalescence and the phone call that shattered everything, and bought a smaller, sun-filled cottage on the other side of town. We painted the rooms colors we chose together with no history attached. We planted a garden. Tending to the soil, watching something grow from nothing was a quiet rebellion against the destruction I'd endured. The legal processes ground on, a distant bureaucratic hum. The police report was filed. The bar complaint prompted an investigation into the family lawyer, who eventually retired early. A civil judgment was entered against Ilara in absentia. It was a piece of paper with no power to extract money from Portugal, but it was something. It was the official record stating, on behalf of the state, that she had done wrong. I needed that stamp. The greatest surprise in healing was the return of a tiny stolen piece of my mother. A year after the sale, a package arrived with no return address, postmarked from Lisbon. Inside, nestled in crumpled newsprint, was my mother's single string of graduated pearls. The note was typed, unsigned. "These were in my suitcase. I thought you should have them. They never looked right on me anyway." It was not an apology. It was an admission, a bone thrown back across the ocean. I held the cool pearls in my hand. They were the one thing she hadn't sold, maybe couldn't bring herself to sell. I didn't feel forgiveness. I felt a clarifying contempt, followed by a profound relief. She could keep the money, the house, the new life. She had given back the one thing that was truly, sentimentally mine. It felt like a trade, and for the first time, I felt I had gotten the better end of it. I took the pearls to a jeweler and had them restrung. I wear them sometimes, not as a noose of memory, but as a talisman. They are a reminder that not everything is lost, and that even from the most barren ground, something of value can be recovered. I do not know if Ilara is happy. I suspect people who build their paradises on the graves of other people's trust never truly are. There is always the fear of the knock on the door, the look in the mirror. My peace came when I stopped wondering about her peace. My story was no longer about what she took, but about what I built after. The scar is still there. The house is still gone. The sister I knew is gone. But I am here. I am whole in a way I never was before, not naive, not blindly trusting, but strong in my discernment. I learned that the ultimate protection is not in never being hurt, but in knowing you can survive the hurt and rebuild. I gave a gift that was pure. That will always be my truth. Her theft is hers to carry. And in the quiet of my new home, with my husband and my garden and my mother's pearls, that truth is finally enough. And so, my dear friends, here we are, at the end of this long, winding road that began on an operating table and led to a sold sign on a lawn I loved. I sit in the quiet of my sunroom, the morning light filtering through the leaves of a lemon tree Ben and I planted last spring. It's still small, but it's thriving. There's a metaphor in that, I think. After a season of uprooting, you learn to appreciate the slow, deliberate act of putting down new roots. They may be shallow at first, tentative, but they are yours. You tend them. You believe in their growth. This journey taught me that betrayal is not a single event, but a climate. It's the atmosphere created by someone you love, where the very air you breathe, trust, shared history, assumed loyalty, becomes toxic. For months, I lived in that climate, gasping. The shock wasn't just, my sister stole from me. It was the chilling realization that the person who knew the texture of my childhood blankets, the sound of my father's laugh, the exact way our mother would hum while stirring a pot of soup, that person had looked at that intimate shared history and seen it as a currency. She had converted our love into a liability and my vulnerability into an opportunity. I've spent countless hours, as I know many of you have in your own situations, turning over the why. Why would she do this? Was it greed? A desperate post-illness mania? A lifetime of hidden resentment? I've come to believe the specific why doesn't truly matter. What matters is the what. What she did. She saw a line, the sacred line between giving and taking, between sharing and stealing, and she chose to cross it. My job was not to follow her into the bewildering wilderness of her justification. My job was to stand firmly on my side of that line, rebuild the fence, and post a clear sign: "You may not pass here again." They tell you to forgive for your own peace, and perhaps one day a distant, abstract forgiveness for the wounded person she must be to have done such a thing will settle over me. But let me tell you what I needed first, what was more urgent than forgiveness. I needed to validate my own rage. I needed to sit with the white-hot truth of it and say, yes, this was monstrous. This was unfair. My anger is not a flaw. It is the proof of my love and the measure of the violation. We are so often rushed to forgive, to be the bigger person, that we skip the essential step of honoring our own righteous hurt. Don't skip it. Your hurt is the compass pointing you toward what you value. My hurt screamed that loyalty matters, that promises matter, that sacrifice should not be met with predation. Healing began the day I stopped trying to untangle her motives and started tending to my own wounds. The physical wound was the easiest. The body knows how to heal. It's the spirit that needs a manual. My manual had a few simple, non-negotiable rules. First, I had to reclaim my narrative. She wanted to frame this as her fresh start, her brave escape. I refused. I named it calmly and repeatedly for what it was: a theft, a fraud, a profound moral failure. I said it to the lawyer, to the police, to my family. I did not whisper it in shame. By speaking the truth without hysterics, I took the story back. It was no longer a sad, confusing family secret. It was a case of wrongdoing. That shift was empowering. Second, I had to separate her sin from my gift. This was the most delicate surgery of all. For a long time, the kidney and the theft were fused in my mind, a Siamese twin of pain. I had to gently, surgically separate them. The gift I gave was an act of pure, untainted love. It was the best of me. Her decision to steal was an act of pure, untainted selfishness. It was the worst of her. They occurred in the same timeline, but they do not belong to the same moral universe. My gift remains beautiful, even if she threw it in the mud. I had to learn to look at my scar and not see her greed, but see my own capacity for boundless love. That capacity is still mine. She could not steal that. Third, I had to build a new kingdom. She had burned down the old one, the kingdom of sisters, of shared ancestry, of assumed forever. In the ashes, I had a choice: to live in the ruins, weeping over the lost architecture, or to clear a new space and build something different. So I built a kingdom of chosen integrity. Its walls are the boundaries I now hold firm. Its currency is honest communication. Its throne is my own hard-won peace. It is a smaller kingdom, perhaps, but it is sovereign. No one holds a secret key. The pearls she sent back, they hang in my jewelry box now. I don't wear them as a chain of sadness. I wear them as a symbol of something that can be returned. Not the money, not the house, not the sister, but my own sense of justice. The act of sending them was her tiny, belated acknowledgement of the line she crossed, and in taking them back, I felt a chapter click shut. It was enough. To you, who have listened so patiently to my story, I see you. I see the quiet heartbreak you might carry, The betrayal that wasn't as dramatic as a stolen house, but cut just as deep. The friend who turned away when you needed them most, the partner who broke a sacred promise, the family member whose cruelty was dressed up as just being honest. Your pain is valid. Your confusion is a sane response to insane behavior. So, I will ask you the questions I had to ask myself, and I want you to be brutally, gently honest in the privacy of your own heart. Where in your life have you been accepting crumbs from someone who stole your whole loaf? Are you making excuses for someone who consistently crosses your lines because the history is long or the love was once real? What story have you been told about your own pain? Have you been told you're too sensitive, that you're holding a grudge, that you should just forget and move on? Does that story serve you, or does it serve the person who hurt you? And most importantly, what is one tiny, defiant act of rebuilding you can do today? It doesn't have to be big. It can be deleting their number from your phone. It can be repainting a room they loved. It can be saying out loud to your own reflection, what they did was wrong. It is the declaration that your life, your peace, your story is yours to author from this sentence forward. This journey is not about becoming hard. It is about becoming clear. The world needs tender hearts, but it needs tender hearts with strong borders. You can be compassionate without being a hostage. You can remember the past without living in its ruins. Thank you for letting me share this weight with you. In the telling, it grew lighter. Your listening has been a kind of absolution. If this story has echoed in the chambers of your own life, I invite you to share a piece of it in the comments below, not for drama, but for solidarity. There is a profound strength in knowing we do not walk these hard roads alone. If you've ever had to rebuild after a betrayal, write, "I am rebuilding" below. Let's stand together as architects of our own better futures. And if you want to join this community of survivors and storytellers, please subscribe. We have so many more truths to tell and so much healing to witness together. With all my heart, thank you. Now go and tend to your garden. Subscribe Voice of Legends for more.